All right, Big Bang. Today is Tuesday. It's August 10th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Chief is here. Chief, how are we?
I'm doing well. Recovered from the weekend. Feeling good. Ready to get after the story.
Recovered.
Yeah. You know, I should just stop trying to do anything athletic. So I had the big event in Detroit. Shout out to all the Steelers who came out for that. Great event. Greektown's always good to me. I'm kind of starting to like Detroit a lot.
I felt the same way
Yeah.
after I spent time there.
Yeah.
I just like any city that, is kind of rugged, that takes a lot of pride in where they're from, even if they know, like, hey, that might not be the best in some aspects, but hey, we're Detroit. I think they take pride in that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, a couple of observations from this time that felt different because now things are open a little bit. So when we were there for the Super Bowl, everything was still very much on lockdown. The whole outdoors smells like weed.
Oh yeah.
The whole, like, you're just walking down the street.
Really?
And you just smell. It's not like you're at a concert, you walk by something like, oh, that smells like weed. No. You can walk. I walked like, 6-7 blocks between the hotel and where the event was, and then a couple other places in Detroit where we went out. And it's just like you could always have the faint smell of weed was just always in the air. So it's legal in Michigan now, and they are taking full advantage of it to the point that
it's a perpetual Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah, like you're getting like a contact high just from like breathing fresh air outside.
Well, there you go.
So that was something. And then, there was, quite a few arrests, but also people just watching, like police officers just watching people fight in the streets too. And then like waiting until it dies down and then arresting them.
Well,
better than,
Well, good. I'm glad that's all right. No falls. You didn't fall.
I had one fall before the game even started.
All right.
So I hadn't rollerbladed in 15 years, but I did have. So I'm like, I'll just go out for this tournament. I was just taking a lap around, and I tried to you can't really change direction at all.
Yeah.
When you're rollerblading, no stops and starts. You're on wheels. So I tried to quick stop, pivot at the bench, and just
went down.
A little bit of a not bad, but a fall, and Ryan Whitney loved it.
Was it caught on camera?
I mean, there were 1,000 cameras there,
so yes.
I'm sure it'll be in the edit. If they put that in, they better put in my goal too. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
They better put it in the goal.
You're fixing up here to have a nice fall compilation as well.
I mean, nothing will compare to the one in New Hampshire where I went through the boards. But this one could have happened to anybody, and it was my only fall of the day. So
that's great.
Yep.
Well, all right, good. Glad you're recovered. We're back to usual Tuesday things. Before we really get into it, though, Chief, I want to talk about the beef kit, the lovely beef kits that we have here on our desks.
I love the beef kit.
I mean, it's sadly, and I say this I know you're happy about this because you're the biggest anti-summer guy in the world. But the fall is coming fast. It's not here yet, but it's coming, and you want to be prepared. You want to go to tasterealchicago.com right now, and you want to make sure you have your beef kit for that first opening weekend for Sunday NFL football.
Yeah, I mean that everybody lucks out with the Bears being at the primetime game that first week one. So you can get up at a normal hour, put your meat and all your spices and all your seasonings, everything comes prepackaged in the beef kit, set up at a normal time, and we're ready to go for dinner at game time. Everybody will be happy.
Yep.
It's awesome. It's delicious. And you're right. I am a fall guy. And when I think beef season, I think of the fall in football. So I'm really excited for it.
So get your beef kit, or you could go to a Home Depot. They are at Home Depot, Fixed and Frank's locations. Make sure you Google. I know there's one in Niles, the Alston ones. So go do that if you want it really right away. If not, they ship pretty quick, guys. So make sure you get it. Available UK, Canada. Also, don't forget about that night window. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, open until 1 a.m. JP Graziano's at night. There's nothing better. All right, Chief. What is the topic at hand?
Tragic story. We're talking about Brittany Murphy, and I think we mentioned it on a podcast recently that I didn't know much about her death or really her life other than Clueless and what was the movie with Ashton? Just Married with Ashton Kutcher. She's also in Girl Interrupted.
She's in 8 Mile.
8 Mile.
Great role in 8 Mile.
8 Mile, yep. And yeah, it was just, for a household name, I would say, like a true A-list type of celebrity. To be suddenly and mysteriously dead at 32 years old is like a tragic thing, and it's something that still pops up. It's in the public's conscience, like it's something that's still discussed. And I know HBO Did a documentary on it not too long ago, maybe in the spring of this year. So it's something that people are still obviously very interested in. And we'll try to get to, I haven't watched that one, but we'll try to get to the bottom of it as far as you and I are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know a ton about it. I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and we're trying to do a better job of being like, hey, we got to do an episode of that, and doing it soon after.
Yep.
We did that with BlackRock, and we talked about this in the 90s draft, I believe. The 90s Heartthrob draft.
Yep.
So we're like, all right, let's do it. I knew there was some funny business, according to some people, as far as her death. I remember being super shocked by it.
Yeah.
You know,
she's 32 years old.
Yeah, young, and she's someone who I think had staying power. Like, she would have been in these movies till it kept going. You don't agree?
Her career had kind of taken a big hit.
Towards the end?
Towards the end, yeah. She was doing like Lifetime movies, and then she was in a movie in Puerto Rico where no one really knows if she got fired off of it or she quit, but it was like another low budget movie, and so like that peak of her career, probably the 8 Mile, Just Married era, had really taken a hit, and that maybe, who knows, maybe that's part of the problem, maybe it wasn't, but she she went out for it. She was auditioned for and really tried, because she has a dance background, for Black Swan.
Oh, okay.
And didn't get it, and then that went to Natalie Portman, who won an Oscar for it. So like she was like kind of always like in the running for some of these other bigger roles of movies that you would remember that maybe perhaps could have changed her career. Even like Angelina Jolie in Girl Interrupted, she ended up getting the lead, and she won an Oscar for that. So like she was always kind of second fiddle, or just, always the bridesmaid, never the bride type of thing, and never really. So as far as that, like she had staying power.
Yeah, I say that in regards to, like, I think she had. I mean, from what I saw, it seemed like she had some range there. Obviously, with
for sure,
the Clueless and the Name Out. Those are two very different characters.
Girl Interrupted too.
Yeah.
Where she plays a girl who has
Sin City.
I can't remember her in Sin City actually, but. She played a girl with like an eating disorder at a mental institution, and she was diagnosed with like agoraphobia. So she was kind of all over the place. And who knows, maybe if she beats out, or Natalie Portman has a conflict or something, and she gets that role, maybe things are way different. But it just didn't work out that way.
Well, all right, how do we where do we want to start here?
Yeah, I mean, we could start with what the official record stated for her primary cause of death, and they listed 3 things. So this is per the coroner in Los Angeles. Their autopsy said she had acute pneumonia. She was anemic, and she had like iron deficiency, and then they said they announced that it was like drugs. So everyone's like, oh, drugs, because she was always like linked to having a coke problem. She was linked to having eating disorders, and these are all things that she vigorously and vehemently denies. So, and people even after her death would say the same thing. Like she was afraid of coke. She never did coke. And wasn't into drugs, wasn't part of that scene in LA. And as far as like the eating disorder thing, she was like, look, like I weigh the same in Just Married that she did in Clueless. And I would say Clueless, she was not fat by any chance or unhealthy, but she had a little chunkier face. And then as she got older, maybe she shed a little bit of baby fat, got a little bit more tone, whatever. But she's like, I'm the same weight. Like, it's just different. I just look different. And, but she was always like, had these rumors around her, about these different things. So they did find drugs in her system, but they're always like prescription or over the counter drugs. They didn't find any like hard, it's not like she died of heroin overdose or something like that. They said it was prescription drugs and then over the counter drugs. So that's like what the official report is, the autopsy report. There's 2 other things that have kind of been linked to it and clouded to it. And we should also talk about her husband too. So do you know about her husband?
I remember there was something with him, but
okay.
I don't remember exactly.
So her husband was this guy named Simon Monjack, and he was an English guy, and he was out there, and they hadn't been married that long. I believe they got married in 2007, and she died in 2009 or 10. And but they, obviously they lived together. Brittany Murphy's mother lived with them too, And so he comes out after her death, and he's blaming Hollywood. He's like, you guys are, and this is on like Good Morning America and the Today Show, places like that. Like, you guys are saying all this shit about her, and it was really weighing on her, and like about like the eating disorder, and like she was always on like the cover of those magazines too, at the grocery aisle, whatever, the OK magazine, tabloids, and all that kind of stuff. So it was very disheartening to see, and then and he looked that was a month he gave that interview. 3 months after her death, he does like this tour video thing of their house with some kind of like off the beaten path media company. It wasn't like it was like E or something like that, and he looks terrible. Like he's a little bit overweight of a guy, but his hair is all disheveled, he's unshaven, and he just looks like he hasn't slept in days or longer. And a guy who, like, honestly, maybe he just looked depressed because his wife died, right? And so but everyone was like, that was like a weird video tour interview thing, like very, very odd. And he was reportedly had said to people close to him that he didn't want to like go on with life without her. 2 months after that interview, 5 months after Brittany Murphy's death, he dies. So his autopsy report said basically the exact same thing as her. So they didn't have like the drugs in his system, which is surprising, and we'll get to that. But it was acute pneumonia, and same thing, like iron deficient, anemic. And so a combination of those things, so it's like, what the fuck is going on? So she dies. 5 months later, he dies, similar symptoms. And now this is where like there must be linked somehow together. What is the actual real cause of death here? And that's where the mold theory comes in, because supposedly now the mother lived with them too, and she was going to bring the suit, and she claims that she got bad information, bad legal counsel, that she settled out of court on this bad construction by the company that built the home that led to these different issues, including the mold. And even though the mold was not cited as a cause of death, she ended up suing that construction company, saying like, hey, like this is the mold was the cause of death. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't this, wasn't that. And then was somehow able to settle out of court again for an undisclosed amount. But that's the mold thing. The reason all these like conspiracy theories get started is really because of the men in her life. And one of them was her husband, and the other one is her father. And her father was not really in her life. The father and Brittany Murphy's mother divorced when she was 2, and he was just absent. Like he was just gone, was not a part of her life. He sues to basically get a DNA test done so he can prove that he is in fact her father, and that gives him like some more credence to do a further investigation. And everyone's like kind of meets it with an eye roll, because he's trying to like capitalize on his daughter's death. Like he keeps making the story about himself and what he's doing, and here's this, and he's like offering to leak details to tabloids for money, and it's, it makes it sound like this guy's like a real creep, like disgusting human. Mm-hmm. But he sues to obtain, first of all, it was a DNA test that said he is her biological father, and then he sues the coroner's office to get tissue and hair from the original autopsy, and he sends those samples into an independent lab, and that lab comes back and says that there are, quote unquote, high levels of up to 10 different heavy metals, and that is what contributed to her death. And some of those things that were also found with the hair and the tissue have been linked to rat poison. So now he goes on to basically anybody that'll have him, Good Morning America, Today Show, etc., saying that she was murdered, she was poisoned, this and that. And that's where the waters get muddied here. Now, like, the coroner comes back. It's like, hey, like, this is actually bullshit, okay? Like, we're not reopening the case. There's nothing to see here. The mother also disagrees with the father's findings. She's like, because she's on this mold thing, and like, kind of dismisses him, saying, like, this guy's just out for money. Like, he had nothing to do with her. And now that, like, he can benefit from it, he's trying to, like, say, like, oh, I was her father. I have a right to know. I'm going to lead this investigation. But everybody just dismisses him. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody like linked to Brittany Murphy. So her publicist, her mother, her agent, all these different people are like, yeah, this guy sucks. And that's what's going on here. Like he's in it for himself. And then the coroner also cited the guy Michael Batten. Do you remember that name?
No.
He's like I would say he's become kind of a celebrity forensic pathologist, and he's done a lot of work on the Epstein case, where he studies, the cause of death and what's in his system and this and that, and he's become a bit of a household name. It's definitely a name we've mentioned on this podcast before, and he basically says, like, those metals, like those, by the time so much time had elapsed between this independent lab study, done by the father, and the original autopsy and the collecting of those samples, that those could have been contaminated and had those metals in there just from the packaging, just because you're sitting in a plastic thing or however it's packaged for that long. He's like, it's not uncommon for those things to get into those samples after a long period of time. So it's like the samples themselves are contaminated. He also said things like hair dye and different like cosmetics can have these elements in there. So if you're testing the hair, if you use some certain particular types of dye, which, she was a bleach blonde, that those metals can show up in there as well. So like this guy, Michael Batten, who's like a very well-respected forensic pathologist, is the one who's kind of like dismissing this. She was poisoned.
The rat poison thing.
The rat poison thing, yeah. But, I would say her husband, if he were not to die of similar causes, would probably be a prime suspect to be investigated further. So this guy, if you look at like his Wikipedia page and you read up on him, a lot of shady issues going on there. So he, I want to get the facts right. So I'm going to pull his thing back up here. So he had all kinds of legal issues. So he was, in 2005, he had warrants were issued for his arrest in Virginia on the charges of credit card fraud. Those charges were later dropped. In 2006, a bank sued him because he had been evicted from four homes and owed almost $500,000.
How does that happen?
I have no idea.
4 homes?
4 homes. And then in 2007, he was arrested and spent 9 days in jail facing deportation because his visa to the United States had been expired. So he got linked up with Brittany Murphy, and everybody was like, this is kind of odd, right? Like, she had dated Ashton Kutcher. She had dated other like kind of Hollywood type people. She had been linked to like her own manager at a time. And this guy doesn't really fit that bill. He was like a writer who doesn't really have anything big to his name. And the only thing that he was kind of linked to was this other movie where he claims that the studio stole his script, and the studio was like, what the fuck? Like, we didn't steal your script. But then they ended up suing each other. And so like he was never really involved. So like the word that, like, when you see these other people interviewed and talk about him, they all say that he's just this shady guy. So then people are like, did he marry her for money, citizenship? What's going on here? His only saving grace is Brittany Murphy's mother. The mother like thinks of him as like her own son. Like, she was very close. So you would think if this guy was like a really bad actor, bad guy, that the mother would like raise some flags after the death. But she, they did interviews together. They appeared together. They lived in the same house together while Brittany was alive and after. And so she didn't raise any red flags about him, but as everybody else in her life said that he was a problem. They said that he just became her manager. So like she fired her agent, fired her manager. He acted as that. He even did he acted as her makeup artist. He acted as anything that would be involved in her career, he was doing it, and he was doing it very badly. So that's why she goes from being like this kind of A-list person. She's up for Black Swan. She does Girl Interrupted, Clueless, all these things that we remember her for. And then you fast forward after, 2008, 2009, while she's with this guy, and now she's in Lifetime movies. She's taking movies in Puerto Rico for money. And there's a lot of theories that the story goes that she showed up to this set in Puerto Rico And she goes into her trailer. Trailer's like all damp inside. There's mold in that trailer. And that they both like contracted some kind of virus or mold or something and ended up being very ill. The other thing that he was always, I'm not going to say convicted. Convicted is the wrong word, but accused of something that I had never even heard of before, but I guess it's somewhat common in LA and Hollywood. Is called doctor shopping. You create these aliases and these fake identities, and you go to a doctor to get a prescription, but you actually get, so you go to see like 4 or 5 different doctors. So you're not getting like the prescribed amount, you're getting 5 times that. So whatever you're on, he would go around and get like much, much more than any normal doctor would prescribe him and her. And that's how they think that, Brittany, like this is one of the things that he would do. And they think maybe that was what contributed to all these like kind of higher levels of drugs, even if they were, prescribed by a doctor in her system at the time of her death, was because he was a guy who would kind of con his way into getting.
And he would do, like, that's confirmed. He would do this?
Yes. That's what all reports say. So that's really like, he really took control of her entire life. And, they would ask, people would say like, hey, like, people in her inner circle, they would talk about how her career was, in a rough patch, to say the least. But then she would just combat that with like, yeah, but I'm actually kind of happy right now. So she's like, if my career's done, I really want to have a family, and there's more to my life than just my career. And these are things she would state like publicly and then to her confidants. And then it all just kind of went away. And leading up to her death, she said that she just felt ill all the time. She felt really sick, and then maybe that was the mold. So she didn't want to go to the doctor because she was actually sick, because she knew that they were engaging in this doctor shopping, and she didn't want it to be like get out, because she was always in the rumor mill, like something was wrong with her. So she was like afraid to go and get actual treatment, as opposed to like having this guy, Simon Monjack, her husband, like run around to doctors and pick up medicines for her through these aliases, that she was really concerned about getting linked and being in the tabloids. Oh, Brittany Murphy's on prescription. She's got a prescription drug problem. And then, so she doesn't go, even though she's feeling ill and people are commenting that she's looking sick, and she doesn't go. And then, there's like a 911 call where she collapsed in her bathroom at home, and her husband's supposedly giving her mouth to mouth, and her mother's on the phone, like frantically calling, being like, oh my God, like she's, Brittany Murphy's passed out. And you can look that up online, and it's just eerie to hear. But that's, to me, it just sounds like the father who came in and was like, yeah, it was rat poison. That has led more credence to let the internet get out of control. But I haven't been able to find any like concrete things that she was linked to this or that. Just like, she was living in a home theoretically with mold, and had these other conditions that just she had pre-existing conditions that led to her death. And she was in a weakened state from maybe some other illness, and there was just kind of like a perfect storm for her to die. I wouldn't say necessarily of natural causes, because she did have those prescription drugs in her system, but she I haven't been able to find like hardcore evidence of foul play.
What are the odds of that? So the house obviously was, did you say that the house was foul with mold as well?
That's what the mother has said.
Yeah.
And then she sued that construction company for a wrongful death. And so they never went to court, so they settled out of court. But that's what the mother says. But again, that's not something that she got herself, and she was living there. So I guess it could have been contained to maybe their bathroom, their bedroom, because they did both die of basically the same acute pneumonia, which could be brought on by that mold. But I think this is one of those things where it's just like, sometimes the evidence is just right there for you. And it's like, you want there to maybe be something more, because it's like, it's so tragic. 32 years old. It's like, how can a 32-year-old person just kind of collapse and die? That there's got to be something else. And if there's no heroin, there's no, hardcore drugs in the system to cause it, then it makes you think that maybe there is, some foul play at hand here. But it just doesn't seem like there's any real evidence for that.
Damn. I mean, what are the odds? Like, they have a mold problem at their house, and then with the whole Puerto Rico thing. So
Yeah, so you had the problem already, and then you go back. You go to Puerto Rico, you have some other kind of mold, and you never really recover. And then you go back to the house where you had it to begin with, and you're just sick and tired all the time.
Yeah.
And you're still, you know, you have the stress of, you know, your career falling apart and, you know, newish marriage and things aren't going well. And then all of a sudden you're weakened and you drop dead. So it sounds like that's what happened. And it's a terrible, tragic thing, but I don't, again, like, unless I missed something, I can't.
That's what you found.
That's what I would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, very sad. I was looking too. It looked like she had a foundation, but now it's defunct as of September 2018. So I don't know.
Say that again.
I guess she had a foundation, but now it's defunct as of 2018.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think maybe the interest and, you know, who knows who was behind that fund too. But does it say?
It says it was her mom.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. The IRS months of activity indicate that it has ceased operations, but who knows? Yeah, very sad though.
Very, very sad. Yeah.
I enjoyed her.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Just Married is a very underrated movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good comedy.
And then 8 Mile is awesome.
Yeah. Do you know that 8 Mile? I didn't know this. It's not just an area. Like, Michigan just does their streets like that. Like, you can be in a wholly different part of the state and go across 8 Mile.
Yeah.
I never knew that. I was like driving across Michigan. I had to pick up White Sox Dave on my way back. And I was like, oh, shit. There's 8 Mile again. And I did, on my way up to Troy, Michigan, pass over 8 Mile, like right outside Detroit. Whoo, baby. That looked like burnt out. Like, it's as bad now as it was depicted in that movie. Yeah.
Not good.
Not good.
All right, Chief, thank you. That's it for today. That's it. Everybody, thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.